All right, welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're all about those elusive six-pack abs.
Yeah, who doesn't want a six-pack, right?
We're going deep into Michael Geary's book, The Truth About Six-Pack Abs.
Oh, good one. Classic.
We've combed through it, all the research, the strategies, the real deal on getting lean and making those abs pop,
Yeah.
cutting through all that fitness noise.
Well, and Geary's kind of perfect for this. I mean, the guy's a certified nutrition specialist, certified personal trainer. He runs truthaboutabs.com, busymanfitness.com. So he's not just talking the talk.
He's walking the walk, too.
Right, exactly. And his whole approach is like evidence-based.
Yeah.
What does the research say? What's he seen? Work with his clients.
Yeah, he's not afraid to kind of go against the grain, challenge some of the conventional wisdom. I like that.
Oh, totally. And his central idea is, look, six-pack abs, a lean physique, it's achievable for most people, but there's a method to the madness.
There is a method, and he promises a step-by-step guide to help us get there.
He lays it out in a way that clears up all the confusion.
Right. One of the things that really stood out to me, I mean, probably to a lot of people listening, is the idea that you might be doing all these ab exercises,
Yeah, endless crunches.
but still not seeing definition, right?
Yeah. Been there, still there.
Geary talks about this concept of relative leanness,
Mm.
basically your overall body fat percentage being like the key factor.
Yeah, so it's kind of counterintuitive. You think, oh, I want a six-pack, I got to work my abs. But it's actually about the bigger picture.
Yeah, it's like you could have a great set of abs hiding under there.
Absolutely. It's like, imagine you've got this amazing sculpture,
Yeah.
but it's covered in clay. You can chisel away at the clay all day long, right? That's like the ab exercises.
Yeah.
But if you don't remove the clay, you're never going to see the masterpiece underneath. That's your body fat.
Got it. Makes sense. So step one is knowing where you stand, right? What does Geary say about figuring out our body fat percentage?
So a couple of ways, right? There's the skin fold caliper method.
Yeah, that's the one where they pinch you, right?
Yeah. Yeah, with those calipers. And it measures the thickness of skin folds at different places.
I've done that before.
Yeah, me too. It's pretty standard. Then you have bioelectrical impedance. Some scales, those fancy ones or those handheld devices use that. It sends a little electrical current through you, and based on the resistance, it figures out your body composition.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And then there's girth measurements, good old-fashioned tape measure.
I can handle that.
Yeah, you measure different parts of your body, and they've got formulas to plug those numbers into. And the good thing is a lot of gyms offer these kinds of assessments.
Yeah, that's good to know. So even if you don't have like fancy equipment at home.
Exactly. But the takeaway is just getting a baseline, knowing your starting point. That way you can track your progress, right?
Yeah, that's smart. So while the book does cover specific ab exercises, it sounds like the real focus is on those strategies for shedding body fat.
Yeah, because that's the foundation. You can't build a house without a solid foundation.
Solid foundation.
Hmm.
All right, let's talk about those ab exercises, though. Geary gets into the anatomy of it all.
Yeah, it's not just about that six-pack, the rectus abdominis.
Right, it's more complex than that.
There are a bunch of muscles in your core that all play different roles. Like the transversus abdominis, that's like your natural weight belt, helps stabilize your trunk.
Keeps everything in.
Yeah, literally holds
Yep.
everything in. And then you have the internal and external obliques. Those are on your sides, and they're all about twisting, side bending, that kind of thing. So it's a whole system.
And a lot of people wonder, are upper abs and lower abs real things?
Right, can you target them separately?
Like, is there a magic exercise for the lower abs?
Well, Geary's pretty clear that you can't actually isolate upper or lower sections of the rectus abdominis anatomically.
It's all one muscle.
Right, it's one big muscle.
Yeah.
But you can work it from different angles.
I see.
So you're not going to find an upper ab button or a lower ab button. But variety in your exercises means you're hitting the whole muscle from different directions.
Okay, that's helpful to know. And what about body positioning during ab exercises? Any tips for staying safe and avoiding injury?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Proper form is huge. And Geary really emphasizes protecting your back. Like, don't arch your back during crunches.
Yeah, that's a classic mistake.
Right, it puts a lot of strain on your spine. He usually suggests keeping a neutral spine or even a slight posterior pelvic tilt, kind of like tucking your tailbone. That way you're engaging your abs without hurting your back.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the specifics of ab training. How much resistance, how often, how long? A lot of people probably spend hours doing crunches, but is that really effective?
Well, Geary's point is those endless crunches, they might not be enough, especially as you get stronger.
Right, you need to challenge yourself.
Exactly. You need progressive resistance to really build muscle. And he makes an interesting point, which is Think about the time you're spending on those super basic exercises.
What are we missing out on?
Yeah, what if you use that time to work bigger muscle groups? You'd burn more calories overall, which, remember, ties back to reducing body fat.
The big picture, right.
Yeah.
We got to keep that in mind.
Always. Okay, so dedicated ab sessions. If we are going to do them, how long and how often?
Give me the good news.
Good news, they don't have to be marathon sessions. Geary says 5 to 10 minutes of intense work can be super effective.
Okay, that's manageable.
And he usually recommends doing them at the end of your regular workout.
Makes sense.
Yeah, that way you don't tire out your core before doing like heavy squats or deadlifts where you need that stability.
Yeah, good point.
But, play around with it a bit, see what feels best for your body.
Okay, what about maintaining those abs once you've built them? Do we got to keep up that crazy routine forever?
Nope, maintaining muscle is actually easier than building it. Once you have those abs, you can probably scale back to once a week for maintenance.
Music to my ears.
Right. And again, the key then becomes staying lean.
Right, that body fat percentage. Geary also talks about core balance. It's not just about the front, the six-pack, is it?
Nope. Got to think about those back muscles too, the lower back
Yeah.
especially.
Yeah, the whole cylinder.
Right. You want a strong, stable core all the way around. It'll help prevent injuries, improve your posture, and even make you stronger in other exercises.
So, to give our listeners a taste of Geary's ab workout recommendations, can you walk us through some examples?
Oh, yeah. He's got a good mix. There are lying leg thrusts. Those are great for lower abs.
I've seen those. They look tough.
Yeah, they work you. Then there are abdominal scissors, kind of like you're making a scissor motion with your legs. It engages the whole core. Stability ball ab crunches, adds that instability, makes your core work harder to stay balanced. He even talks about progressing by holding weights. Renegade dumbbell rows, those are more advanced. You're in a plank position on dumbbells and you do rows. It's killer for your core. Abdominal vacuums, kind of weird, but good for that deep transversus abdominis muscle. And then even something like mountain climbers, when you do them with good form, they're awesome for core engagement.
It sounds like he's got you covered.
Oh, yeah. A lot of variety and levels of difficulty.
And he even has full ab training programs, different levels, right?
Yeah, from level 1 all the way up to 7. So you've got a structured plan if you need it. But he emphasizes, and I'll emphasize it again, these ab routines work best with a plan to reduce overall body fat.
Right, that foundation.
Yeah.
So that brings us to full body training for fat loss. This is where things get bigger picture.
Big picture time. And this is really key to Geary's whole approach. He talks about lean body mass, specifically muscle, and how it affects your resting metabolic rate, or RMR.
So how many calories you burn just by existing.
Exactly. And the more muscle you have, the higher your RMR, which means you're burning more calories even when you're just chilling on the couch.
So we need to build muscle.
And the best way to do that is weight training, specifically those big compound movements.
Those multi-joint exercises we talked about earlier.
Right. Geary calls it the metabolic effect of training. He says these compound exercises, things like squats, deadlifts, lunges, bench presses, they're actually more effective for revealing your abs than tons of isolated ab exercises.
Really? More than ab exercises for abs.
It seems counterintuitive, but think about it. These big movements, they use so many muscles, they create this huge metabolic shift in your body, burning a ton of calories. It's like throwing a log on a fire versus just striking a match. The log keeps burning long after the match goes out.
So we're talking about a sustained calorie burn.
Exactly. And to be clear for our listeners, when we say multi-joint, we mean exercises that work several muscle groups at once. Like a squat hits your quads, hamstrings, glutes, and even your core for stabilization. A deadlift, almost your entire body. Bench press, chest, shoulders, triceps, these are the big calorie burners. Single joint or isolation exercises like a bicep curl or leg extension, they have their place, but they shouldn't be the main focus.
Focus on the big guns.
Big guns, big movements. And Geary's point is that this full body approach is better than endless cardio and isolation exercises.
Why is that?
Well, he explains that those big weight training sessions, they keep your RMR elevated for like a day or two after you work out.
Wow, that's a long time.
Yeah, it's a big difference. Steady state cardio, like jogging, only elevates your RMR for a few hours.
So if you're trying to burn fat, that consistent elevation is key.
Huge. And there's the bonus of those muscle-building, fat-burning hormones that get released. So full body training is a win-win.
I'm sold. Geary also talks about something called the quantity of work. What's that all about?
So this is kind of cool. Think of work like in physics, right? Force times distance.
High school physics flashback.
Exactly. So in the gym, force is the weight you're lifting, distance is how far you move it. Geary says the more total work you do, the more calories you burn, the bigger the metabolic response. He even calculates it out for different exercises. And you know what he found? Those big compound movements, even though you're lifting heavier, they often involve moving the weight a greater distance overall.
More work, more results.
Right. Like a clean and press, you're lifting a barbell from the floor to overhead. That's a lot of distance covered, a lot of work done.
How efficient.
Yeah. So stop wasting time with those tiny movements. Go big.
Go big or go home. Speaking of going big, what about equipment? Free weights versus machines, what's the verdict?
Geary is team free weights, all the way.
Dumbbells, barbells, all that.
Yep. He says machines have their place, but free weights are the AVPs. They work more of your stabilizer muscles. Think about it, when you're using free weights, your body has to work harder to control the movement to balance.
Yeah, it's not fixed in one plane.
Right, it's more functional, more like real-life movements, and he even says some ab exercises are better with free weights.
Makes sense. So less about the fancy machines, more about those basic foundational movements.
Exactly. Back to basics.
And finally, cardio. Everyone's favorite one.
Yeah, it depends on who you ask. Gary's not anti-cardio, but he's got some caveats.
What does he say?
He's not a huge fan of excessive steady-state cardio, like long, slow runs, as the primary focus for fat loss.
Interesting. Why not?
Well, he says it doesn't elevate your RMR as long as intense weight training does, and if you overdo it, you could actually lose muscle.
Which would lower your RMR.
Exactly. Counterproductive. He compares marathon runners, who are super lean but not necessarily muscular, to sprinters, who do those high-intensity bursts and tend to be more muscular.
Different types of training, different results.
Right. He suggests if you do cardio, make it high intensity, like intervals or hill sprints. But overall, for most people, he says focus on those 3-4 weight training sessions per week.
Okay, so prioritize the weights. Got it. Now, let's talk about the big one, the one everyone wants to hear about. Diet. Geary says our eating habits are the #1 reason people don't see their abs.
It's true, sadly. You can't outrun a bad diet.
Can't outrun it. He dives deep into the role of insulin.
Right. Yeah, insulin's a hormone that regulates your blood sugar. It gets a bad rap sometimes because it does promote fat storage, but it's also important for muscle building and recovery.
So it's not the enemy.
Right, it's about balance. The key is understanding how different carbs affect your blood sugar and insulin levels.
He talks about the glycemic index, or GI. That's how quickly different foods raise your blood sugar.
Right, some foods spike your blood sugar, others have a more gradual effect. He acknowledges that lower GI foods are generally better, but he doesn't want people to get obsessed with the GI number.
It's not the be-all and end-all.
Right, what matters more is the overall quality and quantity of carbs you're eating. And he says combining carbs with protein and healthy fats can help slow down the blood sugar response. Fiber also helps with slower digestion. So think whole grains, veggies, that kind of thing.
Okay, so the whole picture, again, not just the numbers.
Mm-hmm.
What about all the fad diets out there? Low carb, low fat. What does Geary think of those?
Yeah, good question. He's pretty skeptical of most of them. He's not a fan of the super restrictive diets, the ones that cut out entire food groups.
Why not?
Well, he says they can work against your body's natural needs. Like with low carb, sure, you might lose weight initially, but a lot of that is water weight.
Yeah, I've heard that.
And it can make it harder to build and maintain muscle. And in the long run, those super restrictive diets, they're hard to stick to, so you end up yo-yoing.
Which messes up your metabolism.
Right. Low fat can also be problematic. You might end up craving more carbs, and it can mess with your hormones. His message is dish the fads and focus on balanced eating.
That sounds like a good plan. Now, one thing that really surprised me, Geary actually says eating the right kinds of fat can help you get leaner. I feel like that goes against everything we were taught growing up.
Yeah, that's a big one. It's like the opposite of what we used to believe. But he debunks that myth that fat equals fat.
There are good fats and bad fats.
Exactly. He's all about healthy fats. He even says they should make up a decent chunk of your calories, like 20 to 40%.
Wow, that's a lot.
But it's good for you. Good for fat loss, good for your health in general.
So what kind of fats are we talking about?
So think avocados, nuts, olive oil, fatty fish.
The good stuff.
Right, the good stuff. And he's very clear about avoiding processed and hydrogenated oils, those trans fats.
Those are the bad guys.
Bad guys, stay away from them. He even says saturated fats like coconut oil and butter are okay in moderation.
Okay, so no more fearing fat. It's all about choosing the right ones.
Exactly. So instead of cutting out entire macronutrients, be smart about your choices within each group.
Okay, so big picture, healthy eating. What does that actually look like in practice?
So for Geary, it's all about whole, unprocessed foods.
That's a familiar theme.
Yeah, shopping the perimeter of the grocery store, fresh produce, lean meats, fish, all that. He stresses the importance of protein, carbs, and fats, all three.
They all have a role to play.
Yeah, so make sure you have protein at every meal, healthy carbs, and those good fats.
And avoid those sneaky things like fruit juice.
Right, it's all sugar. And always read those food labels. Be a label detective.
Know what you're putting in your body.
Exactly. Now, here's a concept you might not expect. Infrequent overfeeding. It's kind of like a planned cheat day, but there's a method to the madness.
Tell me more.
Oh.
I like the sound of this.
So Geary explains that occasionally overfeeding, especially on healthy carbs, can actually help regulate your metabolism and appetite.
How does that work?
Well, when you're constantly restricting calories, your body can kind of freak out. Your metabolism might slow down, you might get super hungry.
It thinks it's starving.
Yeah, exactly. So by having a planned overfeed, maybe once a week, you give your body a signal that it's not starving. It can help prevent that metabolic slowdown, and it's also good for your sanity.
So a cheat day with a purpose. I can get behind that.
It's not just about indulging, it's strategic. Now, what about how often we eat? Should we graze all day or have bigger meals?
What's Geary say?
Geary's a fan of smaller, more frequent meals, like 5 to 6 throughout the day.
Why of that?
He says it can slightly boost your metabolism because of the energy it takes to digest food, what's called the thermic effect of food. Plus, it keeps your blood sugar and insulin more stable, which helps with energy levels and fat burning. And he emphasizes never skipping breakfast.
Breakfast is king.
Fuel up for the day. Now, Geary also calls out 2 hidden evils in our food supply. High fructose corn syrup, that's HFCS, and trans fats.
Yeah, those are the bad guys.
The worst. He says HFCS is processed differently by your body than other sugars and tends to get stored as fat more easily. Trans fats, those are in things like partially hydrogenated oils, margarine, shortening. They're linked to all sorts of health problems.
Heart disease, I think.
Yeah, and more. So his advice is read those labels, avoid processed foods, and consider shopping at stores that prioritize healthy ingredients. Vote with your dollar.
Absolutely. He also talks about some interesting things like the benefits of dietary calcium and even tea for fat loss.
Yeah, those are a little less talked about. He mentions research linking higher calcium intake to reduced body fat. Dairy's a good source, but he also gives alternatives for people who can't do dairy.
Like leafy greens, I think.
Yeah, and sardines. And with tea, he's talking about green tea, oolong tea, white tea. They have these compounds that might boost your metabolism a bit and help with fat burning.
So a little tea break can actually help.
Might as well, right? So to summarize all this dietary wisdom, Geary provides a nice little list of his key strategies and even some example meal plans.
That's helpful.
Yeah, it's all about putting it into practice. And remember, it's not just diet and exercise. Geary also talks about lifestyle factors that are important for getting those abs.
Oh, right. Like what?
Stress is a big one. High stress means high cortisol, and cortisol can mess with your fat loss.
Stress belly is real.
It is. So managing stress, whether it's meditation, breathing exercises, whatever works for you, is crucial. Sleep is also huge. Lack of sleep also raises cortisol. He says most adults need 7 to 8 hours.
I need more sleep.
We probably all do. Staying hydrated is key too. Water all day long helps with everything. Fat burning, energy, even controlling your appetite. And watch your sodium intake. Too much salt can make you retain water, look bloated, limit alcohol, obviously. And he even touches on eating organic if possible. But his main focus is definitely on diet and exercise as the foundation.
Right, those are the big ones. Now, for our listeners, I think Geary's frequently asked questions section is super helpful. He tackles a lot of the myths out there about getting abs.
He debunks those myths left and right. It's like a myth-busting party. He answers questions like, can I eat after 6 p.m.? And the answer is yes. It's about total calories, not when you eat them. Is morning cardio on an empty stomach best? He says, no, it's better to have a little fuel first. Can I start reduce fat with side bends? Nope. Spot reduction is a myth. You got to lose overall body fat. He talks about fat burner supplements. Do they work?
Spoiler alert, probably not.
He basically says, save your money. He addresses how often you should train abs. Not as often as you think, focus on the big compound movements. He debunks the myth that high reps with lightweight tone your abs. It's about building muscle with heavier resistance.
So lift heavy.
Lift heavy, but lift smart. He talks about the role of genetics in obesity. It's not all your genes, lifestyle matters too. He even addresses those magazine cover models. They don't just wake up looking like that. It's hard work and dedication.
No magic bullet?
Nope. He explains that you can't turn fat into muscle. It's two different processes. And he's pretty blunt about those electrical stimulation ab belts.
Those things you see on TV.
Yeah, he basically calls them junk.
Okay, so a lot of myths busted, a lot of information. So to wrap things up, what are the big takeaways for our listeners today?
Bottom line, if you want those visible abs, you got to reduce your overall body fat. And the way to do that is a combo of full body resistance training, compound movements, free weights, and a healthy diet that's not overly restrictive.
No fad
I
diets.
know fad diets.
And those ab exercises we talked about, they help, but they're not the main event.
Right, they support the main goal. And don't underestimate those lifestyle factors. Managing stress, getting enough sleep, staying hydrated, all that stuff matters.
It's a holistic approach.
It really is. And as Geary stresses throughout the book, consistency is key. This is not a sprint, it's a marathon.
A marathon you can win.
Exactly. It takes time, it takes patience, but it's achievable.
So for our listeners out there, what's one small change you can make today, whether it's your diet, your workout, or your lifestyle, that will get you closer to those six-pack abs and a healthier you? And don't forget to check out Geary's book for all the details.
Yeah, lots of great info in there.
We've just scratched the surface.
We have. And as always, if you've got questions after this deep dive, hit us up.
We're here to help. Thanks for joining us.